everyone.
Hello and welcome back to A Cast for Crows. No, that's not going to work either.
Oh my god,
You gotta roll
Joe!
with it, it's fine.
Alexa needs to do this.
No, I don't.
Alright, for real this time. Hello and welcome back to A Cast for Crows, the Game of Thrones inspired podcast here on deadscreen.net. We are here to discuss Season 6, Episode 3, titled Oathbreaker. I am Joe Ballard, resident book watcher and show reader, and with me as always are...
Alexa, Rahman for us.
Drew, Andrew, Andy, all of the above.
Yes, he's given us all of them this week. Very nice.
So
There's only one place we can start. You know
I've
it.
had some issues with this season. You guys know my deal with Jon Snow and coming back to life. And I'm going to preface this next part by saying I'm okay with that if this next thing doesn't work out the way that I think it's going to work out, because it is so close to just ruining the show for me.
Oof.
If you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what went on, I will jump in when I need to jump in.
All right, very good. Well, Bran had another flashback vision with the Three-Eyed Raven this week, and it was the long-awaited Tower of Joy scene. Many book readers have been waiting for this. And what we got to see was a young Ned Stark, a more grown-up Ned Stark, with Howland Reed and a few other northern soldiers who were fighting for Robert's Rebellion. And they headed to the Tower of Joy to find Sir Arthur Dayne, known as the Sword of the Morning, and a few other members of the Kingsguard. And the goal was to rescue Lyanna Stark, Ned's sister. And the battle kind of it ended differently from what we had always been told, in that the great Sir Arthur Dayne was not just killed by Ned Stark, but Ned was losing the battle pretty badly, and the only reason he lived is because Howland Reed snuck up and stabbed Sir Arthur Dayne in the back of the neck, and then Ned finished the job and sliced his neck. So, and unfortunately, the showrunners pulled a major cockblock on us readers, because Ned and Bran were heading up to the tower after they heard a scream, and we all thought we were going to see Lyanna Stark finally, and a certain baby with her, but the Three-Eyed Raven decided that Bran had seen enough for one day, so that's all we got to see. But as show watchers, I'm curious to know what you guys made of that scene and what you think we learned from it.
So, I think we learned that Game of Thrones is walking a very, very small line, because Bran yelled something and Ned turned around, meaning they're introducing elements of time travel, which is wrong. And it's... You remember the last show that was real good before they introduced elements of time travel?
I think it's called Lost.
How'd it go once they did that?
It went, I
Name
mean,
one show
It
that
bombed.
did not have time travel and then introduced time travel and was better off for it. The answer's no, because it doesn't exist. Because time travel ruins stuff. And I'm so nervous. When that happened, it pulled me completely out of the episode, and I sat up in my seat and went, oh no. Like, this is just not... And I mean, if anybody can do it right, it's probably Game of Thrones, but, oh man. Like, talk about going to, like, being... potentially messing a whole bunch of stuff up. Like, time travel is just such a hard thing to do correctly, and we just don't have it in this. And it's just like it's fine if he's having visions. Like, that whole thing I thought was a very creative and cool way to, like, show us stuff from the past, but the ability to influence it gets real hairy real quick, and I'm worried about it.
that's fair.
What do you think, do you think they've shown us the possibility that Bran could actually change the past and therefore change the future?
I don't know, and that's the
Or
thing is we don't.
That's like complicated
I
because
don't
like
think we know enough. And if it's just like every so often Bran yells a lot and then somebody hears like who
well
cares? Then he's just like being
because
a
like
mild annoyance in the
in the
past.
last episode we saw him time travel have a vision like time travel vision like I don't really know what it is because he's like not just like obviously there like no one sees him so it's weird but like he was saying stuff he was trying to say something he was speaking in the last vision and no one heard him.
Right. So it's like we don't know enough yet about it, but it was just one of those things that it's just a big warning sign to me because in terms of doing it in a way that doesn't come across as like cheesy or convoluted or something, I feel is very difficult to do. And I don't like it. It's never interesting. Just stick with what happened. What happened then happened. You can't go back and change stuff. What is he gonna go back and be like, hey, don't go to the wedding because a whole bunch of shit goes down? And they're like, oh, okay, thanks. Oh, it happened.
I feel like his ability to change things isn't as strong like that like I don't know like I feel like he has to want to change things or something like that because he really didn't like his dad didn't hear him until he said something like father like no or something like that like so I feel like he doesn't have the ability to actually make a difference yet. I really don't understand what that was because like I don't want to say it was just time travel because I feel like you would be like more obviously there and like you would be able to hear him every single time if he was time traveling so it's like somewhere between a vision and time travel.
Right. And which is why, it could happen again and we could like the whole time travel thing could just be proven wrong very easily. Just
Yeah.
the way they set it up sort of worried me, and I just feel like that's a hard thing to work with. There's so many, because it's like, say he gets better at it, and say he can go back and change the past, then like,
Well,
just go back and change everything, make everything
I
fine.
think like eventually something's gonna have to get changed because I don't see the point of introducing the fact that he could make an impact on the past without him ever doing so.
I mean, the
But I don't think it's
only
gonna like stop the red wedding or something like that.
right,
Like
the only
maybe
way, and I don't think this is a good story mechanic. I don't like this
yeah.
mechanic when people do it, but the only way it would sort of be like within the realm of Game of Thrones stuff is if he does something that had already happened in the past. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't know enough about Game of Thrones, but maybe
Like if he hadn't
somebody,
gone back, it wouldn't have ever happened, kind of
right,
thing.
maybe somebody in some fight, was able to beat somebody that he wouldn't normally beat, and maybe it's because Bran, like,
I feel
I don't
like
know.
if
But
anything, it's gonna have to do with the Night's King, because we've already seen that there's something going on between the Night's King and Bran in like the like next or like this season on Game of Thrones, and we see like Bran staring at the Night's King. So I feel like if anything, it's gonna have to do with that. But I guess that's just speculation at this point, obviously.
and so is that, I don't know anything about that. So is that something where it could be a situation that he's doing something that already happened or he's changing something that happened? Because those are very different to me. One of those I'm like kind of okay with, and the other one's just gonna bug me.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that would be really lazy story writing if they just changed something
Exactly.
that already happened.
Exactly.
And like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Joe, what do you think?
I'm I'm going to take a completely different view on this and say that I don't think Bran is going to have the ability to change anything at all about the past.
Which
So, Andy, I wouldn't worry so much about this, and let me explain why. Because one, if the three-eyed raven had this power, why not just do it himself? And two, because he's had the power for like how old is he? Like at
He's
least
had like
a few,
1,000 years. He's
something
been
like that,
there.
like extremely old. And second off, I honestly did not see that as anything more than young Ned Stark thinking he heard something like just in the wind. Like I don't think he would put more thought into that. And I think Bran's goal is, like the Three-Eyed Raven told him, that he will leave eventually, but not until he has learned everything. And how are we taught to solve conflicts in the real world in school? they make us look at history, they make us look at our past mistakes, and then see what we did wrong and apply that into future conflicts. And I think that's what Bran is getting here. He's getting a full visual history lesson, and by learning stuff like Jon's parentage, or like Alexa said about the Night's King, he can provide valuable information that no one else can.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I suppose the Thread Raven can't do that, maybe because I guess he's stuck in a tree for whatever reason. But I don't see any reason to worry about Bran pulling a time travel or changing the past.
Yeah,
I think he can change the future due to the information he's going to keep getting, but I don't see him changing the past. So, I really don't think it's a worry.
What you're describing is the best case scenario, and it's what I really, really hope happens. So, like you said, if it's just a scenario where he can't see stuff and he can't really influence or interact with it, and maybe they're like separate instances where he could influence it, but that didn't actually really happen in the past, or maybe his ability in the past is just to be a mild annoyance and just make the tiniest little bit, that's perfect, fine, leave it like that, because then he doesn't have any real influence. What I was worried about was him being able to have some major influence, but what you described is what I want. That's the best case scenario.
I don't see what he would change. I don't think they're going to be like, you know what, let's pretend the Red Wedding didn't happen and fix it completely.
But the problem is, if he changes something, it basically introduces a mechanic that would a
butterfly, that kind of thing.
In the scope of the world, if he can change this, why can't he change this? It's sort of that Harry Potter thing where she had the little thing that she could control
time turner,
and then they just didn't talk about it for the rest of the book. Really? The rest of the series, which that instance, it was kind of cool and okay, but it kind of, if you're really into the lore and stuff, it's just well, why not use this for all these other things?
But I think and then I'm not trying to get too off topic, but I think in that case, it's kind of one of those things where you have this ability and how devastating it could be if you mess with it too much.
But it's just one of those things. If he could actually have a major influence on the past, are there any rules stopping him from going and changing the outcome of the Red Wedding or something, other than, hey, you shouldn't do that because it messes up too much stuff?
I feel Bran's smarter than that, though.
It just gets into a sketchy territory where it's you feel vulnerable to all this stuff that already happened when it should just be done. That should be the final say, is what actually happened. And if there's the ability to go change it, it's just there's this big cloud of what if that is never really satisfied.
And we're so emotionally invested in everything that has happened, whether it's good or Red Wedding, Ned Stark's death, whatever. It would kind of destroy the effects of that we've all seen. And I cannot see the showrunners going that route.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen.
I see why it was necessary to bring Jon back. That's a whole different thing to me than bringing back Robb Stark and Ned Stark.
Right.
Because their storylines ended and they don't need anymore. But with Jon Stark, there was still so much left that we needed to figure out.
Right. And even in the scope of the world, that made sense,
And it just changed so much. It would be backtracking.
Right. We already saw that she had the power to do crazy magical things. She birthed the weird shadow monster that went around and killed somebody. For her to do this wasn't super out of this world for Game of Thrones, and it's just, I don't know. I just don't want it to happen.
I think you'll be fine.
So,
in other news, I'm sorry, to continue the question Joe originally had asked, I think one of the things that we did learn for sure from the scene, though, is that Ned isn't necessarily as honorable as we had come to believe. Because his whole life he had been telling people, oh yeah, I killed this guy, but really he wouldn't have done it if it weren't for Howland Reed. And it kind of just amps up his story. So this whole time we've been led to believe that Ned's just the most honorable man in the kingdom, and I think the fact that even Bran was surprised by it says a lot about him.
I have a question, and it might come across as a dumb question, but the guy with Ned Stark. What was his name?
Howland Reed.
Did we know him before, or did
We
we just
know
know him
his
from stories?
kids. His
Oh,
kids are the ones that were with Bran.
Okay, because I kept hearing like that name, and then we saw him, and I was supposed to be like, is that a younger version of somebody that we already knew? Like,
I don't think we've never seen Howland Reed, I don't believe.
But like
but
I knew.
No, we haven't. That was
I knew
our
that
first
name.
introduction.
He's important. I think we've mentioned him before because he's one of the few people who would potentially know about Jon Snow.
Okay.
Because he was in the room.
Okay. Yeah, I just did. As a dumb person, I was trying to piece together like, have I seen him before? Because I know I've heard that name before.
Yeah, we've definitely mentioned him before. He's important in the sense that he would know if Jon Snow were Lyanna and Rhaegar's child.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting learning about Ned because it was something I had always suspected as a book reader was that he had a kind of a darker past than we were led to believe most of the time. And what we saw in that scene was, two honorable swordsmen going at it, but one was very clearly better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you guys a quick info about Arthur Dayne, he was probably the only knight in Westeros who was probably held in higher regard than Sir Barristan. Like, he was the best, bar none. And so Ned, as you guys saw, Ned would never have defeated him on his own. Like, it was no contest. Yeah. But Howland Reed, it was interesting. If you think about the correlation here, Ned's life, if you'll remember, he wasn't supposed to die that day that he did, but it was Joffrey's intervention that did it. Mm-hmm. And if you think back, and now we see this memory, he should have died that day. Yeah. But again, it was a last-second intervention that saved his life. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, like, it's interesting, too, because, like, obviously I was aware that Ned was going to make it, but I got, like, nervous there. I was like, wait, what's going on? He's alive. What's going on? Or, well, he was alive. Not alive right now, but we obviously know he's much older when he dies.
I was more worried that Howland Reed was going to die. I was like, please don't please let him still be alive or something.
I didn't.
Or don't kill him here.
I didn't realize it was Howland Reed until someone said it, like after he had already killed the guy. I was like, oh, okay. I guess you're important too.
But yeah, definitely interested to see more flashbacks and hopefully
confirm that theory that's been nagging us.
Yeah, no more trolls. Come on, Benioff and Weiss. You got us once. Don't do it again.
So, as a primary book reader, will you be satisfied if that's confirmed in the show? Will it not take away like a little bit of enjoyment out of it? Or is it like all but confirmed by most book readers?
From my understanding, it is.
That's correct. It's all but confirmed by most book readers. It's one of those things. It's like we talked about it last season that there's enough clear hints spread throughout all 5 books that you can put it together, and it's pretty clear. So it wouldn't ruin anything for me just because it's so widely expected.
Okay.
Didn't George R. R. Martin wasn't he like, yeah, you guys figured it out?
I don't think he's done that yet. He doesn't seem like the type who would do that.
I don't know. I read something, but there's lots of things on the internet, so.
But yeah, probably time for our next topic, I think,
yeah,
Andy.
Yeah. So, moving on. Ramsay is talking with some person who wants to work with him but doesn't want to kneel or bow or kiss his rings or do any of that shit. So instead he's like, yo, I got you something. And he has Tonks and like a super old Rickon. Because last time we saw him, he was like 2 years old.
It must have been like season 2 or 3 last time we saw him, so it's been a good while.
Like, Lauren was like, who is that? I don't know who that is.
My cousins were asking the same thing. I was like, that's Rickon. Come on.
Like,
I was surprised at that, though. Like, so many people were like, oh my god, I can't believe they kept the same actor because he's so much older. I'm like, guys, it's the exact same thing with Bran.
Yeah.
And
I know,
for
but
me
Bran,
personally,
like,
I didn't think he looked different myself.
No.
I don't know.
Look,
he just looked more pubescent.
The thing was, like, we saw a lot of Bran, and so it made sense to stick with him, even though he's just like older and big now. Whereas we saw like just little bits of Rickon, and all he did was go like ah, and then like that was it. So like replace him with somebody who's maybe a little closer to his age.
But he is close to his age because he's his age.
No, closer to like the age. Like, is he the right age for the books?
Daenerys is supposed to be like 14
No.
at the start of the book, so I don't
All
really
the
think
actors,
that's too much of a
all
problem.
the actors are older than their book
Right.
characters at this
What-
point.
And I just explained it wrong. Like, so in the scope of time that's passed, most actors look around the same age. Bran is the big one, who's obviously older, but Rickon in the span of that time has gone like from a little tiny toddler to like a full functioning adult, and it's just like I didn't know who it was. Like I knew who it was supposed to be. But I was like I thought it was a kid. This is like a teenager looking person. So I don't know. Could have replaced him. I would have been fine with it. He didn't do anything. He was of no
I would
value.
have
for the-
noticed.
Yeah, I would have noticed too. I was like, I was glad they kept
Yeah,
the
I
same
didn't.
actor.
I didn't mind that it was the same actor. Like he just looks like he's aged. It's been a good while.
Well, that's what I was trying to ask. Was that has it been long enough in the show from last time we saw him to this time we saw him where a normal person should have grown that much, or is it because it's a TV show and he's grown like 8 times in the amount of time? Eight, whatever.
I don't know how much time's supposed to have passed since Ned died. Like I don't know what
Yeah, that's
time frame is at all.
the passage time for somebody who doesn't follow that stuff very closely is like I have no idea. You could be like, yeah, it's been the same like it's in the same year, or you could be like it's been.
Well, it's
5
like The
years.
Walking Dead's like that. It's been like 6 years since it's been out, but it's only supposed to be like 2 years since the outbreak. So it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Joe?
Yeah, I don't know how much time has passed, but it's besides Rickon, what did you guys make of that Lord kind of, not taking any shit from Ramsay? And I want to know. I know Alexa knows about the Northern conspiracy
Yeah, I didn't
theory.
think
And,
about it until I read that theory, because it just seemed like he was just like, screw you, you suck.
I don't know whatever conspiracy you guys are talking about. So I interpreted it as they're just trying to set up Ramsay's little squad as like obviously the bad guy squad. Like, because there's a lot of people in Game of Thrones that are very gray, and some people like them and some people don't, and some people like their motives and some people don't. And Ramsay's always been a very like black and white character, and so they're just like hey, look, this is another douchebag, and they're gonna be on the same team, so it's a douchebag team. So you're gonna want the bad stuff to happen to this team. That's how I interpreted it without the conspiracy that you guys are talking
So
about.
since you actually know about this character, sort of, at least the family, do you want to explain who they are in the grand scheme of things, Joe, and then we can go into the conspiracy theory?
yeah, this was one of the Umber family. One of the Lord Umbers. If you'll remember Great John Umber, he was he was with Robb Stark, and he was the guy who, when Robb kind of first became king in the North, he was one of the ones who openly questioned Jon and like even challenged him, and then Grey Wolf runs up and bites him and like takes off a few of his fingers, and then he becomes Robb's most loyal supporter.
Okay.
And this Lord Umber is one of his sons, but what you guys need to know about the Umber family is that they have always been one of the biggest Stark supporting families throughout history. And so that is a major reason that fuels this theory. And basically the theory goes, I'll keep it short, is that this guy is actually planning to side with Jon Snow, and he's basically Rickon. He's pretending to deliver Rickon, but it's actually so he can watch over him while getting on Ramsay's good side. And the other part of the theory is that was not Rickon's direwolf, Shaggy Dog, but it was some other random wolf.
So, first off, this goes back to a reoccurring theme of terrible names for stuff. Shaggy Dog is an awful name for a wolf.
It was a child who named him.
Rickon's a child. What do you
Bad name.
expect?
Just bad name.
I think it's awesome.
The other thing is, like, I like that theory. Like, I think that's a very interesting theory. Is Rickon in on it?
I think he would be in on it.
You do? As opposed to, like
He did not look scared. He
Yeah,
looked
he
more
didn't look
confused.
scared.
okay.
I think it's just his way of infiltrating into like the Bolton household and see what the hell's going on.
So, do you think that's something that they will talk to us about before it like really
Happens.
goes down? Like because I could see them not talking about it, and then
I
all of a
don't think
sudden
so.
them just like turning on it and be like, haha, we were not on your side all along. Or do you think we'll like kind of get little bits and pieces so we can, you know, watch it slowly unfold and sort of know something that Ramsay doesn't?
I don't think we're gonna see it until it happens.
I agree. It seems more the Game of Thrones thing to do to, increase the element of shock and surprise. But as far as like what Ramsay's going to do with Rickon, I want to throw out another theory, and I may be jinxing this whole thing, so forgive me. But I don't think we're going to have to see Rickon get tortured or flayed. My suspicion is that Ramsay is simply going to keep him captive and use him as a pawn, and he's going to try and get. Obviously, he wants to get he wants Sansa back from Jon because he can't properly rule the North without her by his side being a
They need a Stark.
And so I think Rickon will be kept safe for the time being, just held captive, and yeah, Ramsay will probably reach out to Jon in some way pretty soon and try to bargain with them. And we can we can make a good safe assumption that Jon will not bargain. And but yeah, I've always bought into this theory that there is a conspiracy going in the North against the Boltons, and so I'm a little biased towards that one. But yeah, I think Lord Umber is there, kind of playing Ramsay like a fool, and I think it'll allow him to keep an eye on Rickon and keep him safe. We could be totally wrong, but that's what I think.
So I know I've asked this before. What percentage doesn't like the Boltons in the North? Like, what would you say it would be like? Like, would you say it's pretty 50-50?
So tough. It's absolutely impossible to know because there's a lot of northern families out there that are like believed to be hidden Stark supporters, but it's impossible to guess right now.
Okay.
So I like that theory. Like that theory makes that whole exchange much more interesting to me.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys are right. I'm gonna be watching for some of the stuff next time that goes down, but like that makes that whole thing a little more exciting to me. So our Arya storyline is really slowly moving on. So we saw more of her fighting, and instead of just showing one blind, aimless wailing fight, we saw a whole bunch of them in a montage. We learned that she got better at fighting, and then she got her eyeballs back, and then we moved on.
I was kind of bummed with that. Like, we didn't really see her, like, what it did for her too much.
Yeah, I'm confused because I know that her whole, like, all of last season, she seemed relatively committed to that whole thing, like, just doing that. And we saw her, like, falter a little bit, but it never seemed like she was doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, I feel like that was supposed to show us that she's now committed to it, but like I kind of felt like she was committed to it before. Like I agree with you. Like I don't know what we learned from that.
Like I think what it did was it made her more humble, but like you said, it was a montage. We didn't really see much. It was just kind of like, okay, here we go. Here you guys now.
Okay, first I have a gripe with this storyline now, but first off, as far as what she learned, I think the most important thing we should take from that is that she's learned to use all of her other senses much better than eyesight, and I think she'll be she surely has to be much smarter because of that, more careful, more cautious, and but what I have an issue with in this storyline is we saw a montage of her kind of describing her past life and the people, all the people from her past, and she got hit every time she lied and all that. But then they have her drink the water, which we can all assume it would have killed her if she hadn't fully converted to like being no one, being just a girl with no name. But seriously, does anyone really think Arya has forgotten the names on her list and the people that she wants to kill? Like, really? Because if that has to be true for her to survive drinking the water, and we all know that is not true. She has not forgotten the names on her list. She's going to kill some of them. Otherwise, what's the point? But I'm like, really? She's supposed to drink some magical water that will kill her if she was lying. And yet she got through it just fine.
Do you not remember? Do you not remember like those people who like drank it and died?
I remember somebody drinking it and dying from it, but I didn't know I don't remember what its purpose. Like, why did they drink it and die?
Because they were ready. They were ready for death. That was the main reason, and it's like that's what part of what the faceless men do is they call it the gift of death. And like when people are genuinely ready to die for whatever reason, they give them the water, and that's what it does.
So, why was he giving it to Arya?
Test her.
Yeah,
it was like her final test.
Yeah, it was her ultimate test, and I'm sorry, I just found it ridiculous that she passed a killing water test, and we're supposed to believe that she's completely forgotten about her family and her past and like Walder Frey and Cersei and everyone else she wants to kill. I don't buy it.
Maybe she just swallowed it and then spit it back up.
That's it.
That'll be the opening to next week.
Season 6 bloopers coming on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
See her puking up the water. Yeah, I'm just ready for this storyline to move on. I've been ready for it to move on.
It was pretty slow.
Like, to be honest, her whole storyline over the last 3 episodes could have been cut out, and we could have just gone from wherever she was at the end of last season, and she got in trouble and say they just didn't take her eyes away, and then this season starts and she doesn't have her eyes, and just go on from there.
It just felt like really fast too. Like we really only saw her in one other scene as a blind person. It just didn't. It didn't feel like much. It felt like hyped up for no reason.
It feels like it was like that. Oh, the end of Game of Thrones. Jon's dead. Arya doesn't have her eyes. Who knows what happened to Theon and Sansa? Like there's just like all these like, oh no, what's gonna happen? And then the next season starts and it's all like, doesn't matter. We resolved it all.
Yeah, this was a storyline. This storyline was so much better in the books, and I kind of built it up for you guys because I hoped that they would do it justice, but I feel like the pacing's been off.
It's okay. I built up the Sand Snakes for Andy. It's fine.
In terms of the book, why was this interesting? Because as a show watcher, I'm just like, her storyline was absolutely one of my favorites, and then last season it just went.
Well, I can tell you that the main reason it was interesting is because we got to see her experience life as a blind person. Like it wasn't just a couple of fights. I don't think she even fought anybody, but it was more of her going around, and she actually met and made a few friends in Braavos, and she got kind of a job, so to speak. And it was all about like getting to know different types of people, and then her trainer, it wasn't Jaqen, it was someone else, but she was assigned to kill a specific man, and she had to kind of build up to it and learn things about the man without her eyesight, and she learned very different sets of skills as well, which she hasn't seemed to pick up at all in the show. But yeah, it was just fleshed out so much better in the books.
And so, do we think they
abilities, right?
Do we think?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's what George says.
So we haven't seen it aside from Bran in the books.
I want to say Jon had hints of it in the books, but he didn't realize what he was doing.
So it like didn't help her warging abilities or anything like that, because that's what I thought was going to happen.
So.
I thought it was going to enhance them, like how when Bran lost his legs, he suddenly had this new ability.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's like I don't think that connects
That
with
bummed me
her
out.
purpose of going to Braavos.
So,
Okay, that just kind of bummed me out.
do we think that they rushed through this whole blind thing because she has like some really interesting stuff to get into this season, or
Yes.
like is that a valid reason for it to just be a crappy Arya 3 episodes?
God, no. There's really no excuse for. There's never any excuse for poor pacing, which I agree they've done in her case. But I mean, we've always believed that she's training to be an assassin, and that eventually she will use that to go back to Westeros and do some good and finish off some of the people on her list. But
So, as a book reader and somebody who understands everything, you think she kills the rest of her people on her list?
I think she'll get a few.
Which?
I
Who?
don't think she'll get all of. Well, she didn't get all of them because certain other people on her list have been taken out by different people, as we know. But yeah, I think she'll get a few.
So like, isn't Cersei on her list?
Mm-hmm.
Cersei's on her list. Walder Frey and the Mountain. I think.
Do you
Good
think
luck
she
with the
gets-
Mountain, Arya.
Do you think she gets Cersei?
No,
No.
I have a theory for someone else killing Cersei, but I don't think it'll be Arya.
Is it? Can we talk about it? Or should we not talk about it?
We can.
Or do you need to wait
Do
for
we
some
do we
other-
do we want to do we want to transition over into the King's Landing stuff now? That'll give us an excuse.
Do
Okay.
you think it's gonna be the High Sparrow?
I do not. But as far as that, I guess let's dig into that scene. I know Alexa and I were talking about this, how we were genuinely freaked out thinking that Tommen was not completely safe in that supposedly gentle conversation with the High Sparrow. We were thinking, oh my God, could something happen here? Could he die too?
They kept zooming into like his head really close, and I was like, someone's gonna pop up from behind him and like stab him.
I felt weird about that scene too. It was the whole thing where he's like, "Oh, my knees hurt. Can we sit down? Can you sit
Yeah.
right here on this
Sit
bench in this exact
right
spot?"
here.
I was expecting like the bench to just like fall through the floor, and he'd be like, "Whoops."
See, I thought someone was gonna come up from behind him because they were showing him and then like the background a lot, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, what's going on? And like nothing happened, and I was like, oh, okay.
That's kind of how I felt with that Jaime scene in the. It was either the first or the second episode where it was like you got like, oh gosh, the hell's gonna happen here? And then it cut, and then the next episode they're just like walking around. So it's like, how did that get resolved?
Yeah, see, they've done a brilliant job with that because we saw, obviously we saw what happened with Cersei and Marjorie, and then introducing, like, obviously nothing happened to Jaime, but we saw the other sparrows come in towards him, and we're like, oh shit, what's going to happen to Jaime here? And now, as a result, every time we see anything to do with the High Sparrow, we're like, oh shit, who's in danger now?
Well, the thing is, like, the way I see it too is like Tommen's the only one left. They've been dying pretty quickly, like one right after the other. Like, Tommen's gonna die,
And
Yeah, we know it because the witch told us.
but like soon. I feel like I don't think his storyline's gonna progress much further, so I think he's going to die.
I feel like every time Tommen comes into a scene, he starts talking, and I was like, great, his character's growing up a little. He's starting to, like, flesh out a little bit. And somebody just goes, Tommen, bud, that's not the way this is going to happen. And then they just, like, talk shit to him. And then he's like, oh, okay, you're right. And I'm like, come on, dude. You're so close.
Do
You
something.
can't up and do it.
Yeah.
Take some action.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, I think there's going to be an attempted showdown between him and the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow's just going to be like, shut up, and kills him.
So, in regards to that, weren't they talking about a trial by combat or something?
Yes, we
So
were.
explain that to me, because I was following along and I feel like it just went really quickly, and I was like, I just want to make sure I got it all.
As far as that scene with Cersei, Jaime, the Mountain, and then you had Tywin's brother with the Tyrells, kind of in a two different factions, I guess. And I don't even remember exactly what it was, but the Mountain walks in, and of course we saw Pycelle shit himself in one of the worst Game of Thrones moments ever, in my opinion. But they seem to imply that the Mountain is ready for
For battle.
a trial by combat when that comes, and it brings us to a theory I want to get to because we know it's coming soon, which is that Marjorie's trial is going to be dealt with, and my theory is that she and Cersei are both going to be found guilty of different sins, and they're both going to invoke trial by combat. And my theory is that it's going to be obviously Cersei's champion will be the Zombie Mountain because he's supposed to be like unbeatable now. And I think Loras is also going to be found guilty. Well, by the High Sparrow's laws, he is guilty, so we know he's going to be found guilty. And I think he's going to make one final request, and he's going to fight as Marjorie's champion. And it's going to be like one giant trial by combat, and either Cersei or Marjorie will have to face death at the end of it, depending on who wins. So the mountain versus Loras, trial by combat.
Is that how you think we lose Cersei?
No, I think I've thought about this so many times, and I suspect if anyone's going to lose, I think it's the Tyrells are going down, because we have so much more invested in the Lannisters at this point, and the Tyrells tend to come and go. So I think the Lannisters will meet their downfall eventually, but I suspect the Zombie Mountain will will either kill Loras or win the battle, whatever. But yeah, I think it's building to this like major trial by combat, and it's going to be one that involves both Cersei and Marjorie.
I'd see that.
I would love that because that would just be like how freaking intense would that be to watch for?
But I feel like no one would have a chance against the Zombie Mountain.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Are we supposed to? Is Loras supposed to be like a super good swordsman, and am I just not remembering that?
He is supposed to be a super good swordsman, but the show has done a really bad job of emphasizing it.
Right,
but they have said it before. I feel like I knew that.
Right, like I feel like I kind of knew that, but at the same time, when you were like, "Oh, and then they'll fight the mountain," I was like, "Why would he do that? Like, that seems like a bad idea."
See, you're right, but let me explain. There's two reasons. One, because Marjorie's only sin is perjuring to protect him, so he has to be feeling guilt over that.
Yeah,
that's number one. Like, surely, if you're feeling that much guilt, then you volunteer to fight to save your sister and the Queen's life. I don't care if it's the Mountain, whoever. Surely, and we know Loras is somewhat reckless. He's young. It seems like exactly the kind of thing he would do to me.
But if he loses, doesn't that mean she's found guilty? Isn't that what the trial by combat means?
It does, yes. If he loses, then you would think, by logic, Marjorie would die. Of course, Tyrion was also supposed to die, and he didn't. He was helped to escape. But let's remember, Cersei's freaking guilty of 1,000,001 more sins. So, trial by combat doesn't automatically decide, like, the worst guilt. Otherwise, Oberyn would have won that battle, and Tyrion would have just been a free man.
Right. I just didn't know, like, I feel like I got what you were saying with the first part, like he wants to do whatever he can for her because she's sort of standing up for him or whatever. But then it's like, if you're fighting
but you're going to die.
Yeah, if you're fighting the mountain, you're not going to make it. So doesn't that just put her in a bad spot?
I mean, but no one's going to make it.
Yeah, that's what it throws up the question, who will fight the mountain then? If it wouldn't be Loras, and we know the mountain is there to defend Cersei in a trial by combat, but who could actually take him down?
So it's basically like nobody's standing up to fight for her, so if somebody has to do it, he thinks he has the best shot.
Yeah.
That's my theory. Yeah.
All right. I believe that. That makes sense.
I just think can you really see, like, we know we're going to have kind of two separate trials, but can you really see two separate trials by combat in one season for two major characters? I don't see them. I don't see that happening.
So, talk a little bit about Viserys' little birds and all that. Like,
Varys.
Varys. What it says right here?
Did I put Viserys? I apologize if I did.
Completely different character.
I just read it quick. No, maybe you spelled it right. I don't know.
It's spelled properly, yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty creepy scene though. Qyburn with the little kids, and I was so worried that like he might be experimenting on them, like he kind of did with the mountain. But it seems like all he's doing is he's kind of somehow he figured out who some of Varys's informants are, and I guess he seems to have bribed them into doing his bidding now. So
it's just little kids that want candied plums.
I mean, Varys got them
it seems
poor.
that way.
They seem like really poor kids who like don't get that.
Yeah, poor, misunderstood kids, but I guess Varys at least had a way of making them, like, making sure that they could be trusted and that they only reported to him. Like, he was known for being brilliant at that, and it seems that Qyburn has at least adopted a few of his informants, which will help Cersei and Jaime.
So I feel like he always had really good information, and it just... I have a hard time believing that it's a bunch of poor little kids that's getting all the information.
You're right. You're right.
It
can't be just kids. I'm sure it's probably people of all ages, but that's for the purposes of this show. I think we were just meant to see that and be a little freaked out by seeing Qyburn with children.
Oh, and he's just sort of getting started into.
Well,
that
like, I also think that like Varys, like, it wouldn't surprise me all that much if it was just children, because like Varys has like a certain soft spot for like the downtrodden, since he was like taken and like basically like emasculated as a child.
That's a very good point too.
So this episode ended. I feel like all the episodes start and end with Jon Snow right now.
He's pretty important right now.
And so we got to see him sort of walk around for the first time and realize he's alive.
Everyone's shitting themselves.
And everybody's like, holy shit, you're alive. And then I guess his wounds still hurt because when he hugs people or if he touches it, he goes, ouch, and they hurt. So we're learning a little bit how brought back to life Jon Snow operates.
Andy, I have a question for you on this, because I know we've talked about it quite a bit. You were worried that Jon would pop up and just be same old Jon Snow, and I want to know what your opinion is of his demeanor right now, and how different do you think he is, and are you satisfied with what you've seen so far?
So, I don't know if I've seen enough. He obviously, the fact that he cut the rope and hung the guys is not something that he would normally do, especially when he was like looking at Ollie and all that stuff. But it still kind of feels to me like Jon Snow just like popped up and he's like, "What's up? I'm back." He just has like a little more of an edge to him.
I see more of a darkness to him.
Yeah, it's like there's a little something because it looked like he struggled with that decision, whereas normally he would have struggled and then like released him and been like, just go somewhere else or whatever. And this time he struggled with it, and then he chose the decision he probably normally wouldn't have chosen. So I definitely think he has that little darker edge to it, but at the same time, he literally just popped up and now he's Jon Snow again. So,
see, I disagree somewhat, and I want to bring up something we talked about before this show, is that when he first came back and Melisandre asked what he saw, he said nothing. Like as in, it kind of invokes all of our worst fears in real life, that there is no afterlife, that this is all we have. And so that kind of, like, you could see it in Jon's face that he realized, like, he doesn't understand why he's been brought back, but he, now having seen that there is no afterlife in the Game of Thrones world, he knows that he has to make the most of what he has now. And something else that little scene taught us right there is that we had long theorized that he might have warged into Ghost, and we now know that that was not true, that he was just flat out dead.
So, I get what you're saying about him realizing there's no afterlife, but wouldn't that have made him more inclined to just like let the other guys go instead of killing him? If he knows that like death is final and there's nothing after that?
I think that
No, I don't
yeah.
think so. I think because it depends on everyone's personality. We would all react somewhat differently in that situation, but John in that case he realized it hardened him. That's what
Mhm.
it's supposed to show, is it hardened him, and he was like, no matter what I do, these people cannot be trusted. They don't agree. They didn't agree with me, and they went to the extent that they killed me, and so they cannot be allowed to remain in this world. And I think John's going to continue to take that view through the rest of his life, however long he may last now. But it was interesting that when he was going through the four, kind of looking at him and letting them say their last words, that Alistair Thorne was very honest. I would almost say touchingly honest.
I was gonna.
And he didn't seem to have any real hatred for John, but he just said, if I had to make the decision over again, I pray that I would make the right one. Just saying, I genuinely believed that I did what I thought was best for the watch. But then you had Ollie, who did nothing but look at him with like a pure loathing.
Such a
Like
smug little shit.
yeah, and it was like a lot of people freaked out after the show because it was like, oh my god, I didn't think he was going to kill an underage Ollie, and I'm like, it didn't affect me at all, to be honest. I was like, okay, cool, they're dead. But what did you guys make of seeing Ollie be hanged, and did it have any effect on you?
Oh,
I wasn't like necessarily affected. I think what it did to me is honestly I saw what you saw. Like he's hardened because I don't think he would have done that prior to like his whole experience with death. I think he would have been like what Andy said, like just get out of here.
right. Like that's the decision I thought he definitely would have made beforehand. It's like I thought that was a big moment of, like you're saying, he's a different person now because he looked at the kid in the face and then was see ya and then cut him down. You know.
See, like one thing I picked up from that scene too is just like, well, more so him saying there was no afterlife. I think it adds an like interesting element to the show because like for a good while and like maybe it continues to be so, Jon Snow seems like a Jesus-like figure to me. Like he's coming back and he's gonna save us all, kind of thing. So like I think like taking on like a non-religious aspect in terms of like no afterlife is interesting.
But he did come back.
But there was no afterlife. What I'm saying is that's like something that's generally a religious thing. There's like an
Right.
afterlife.
Right.
And you wonder how it may affect Melisandre too.
Yeah, you saw how it affected her. I mean, she was like, what?
Yeah, but at the same time, she brought him back.
But everything she's been hoping for and all this like I think it screwed with her religious beliefs because this whole time she was thinking like there's going to be some afterlife and that she was going to see the Lord of Light and all this stuff and
So
like it makes her question it.
there's been a couple times, and I know they did it this earlier this season where they show like the other priests and priestesses that are like worshiping the Lord of Light or the Red
The red
something or
priests and
other.
priestesses, yeah.
So they've shown that like 3 or 4 times over the last couple seasons. So is something more going to come of that? Is that like building towards something?
I, I think they're introducing a new one this season who's going to be important.
Because I
I
feel
think.
like they showed at least the beginning of this season, they showed some of them talking about stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to play a bigger role. But what's interesting is we seem to be hearing so much more about the Lord of Light, and we also get preached to about like the 7 gods down in King's Landing, and of course the gods of the North. They pray to the trees.
The drowned god.
Yeah, the drowned god. We have the faceless god or whatever it is, and then over in Volantis, I think they're also kind of like to the Lord of Light. I think that's who they're
We
with.
saw a red
kind
priestess
of.
in Volantis. I was preaching
Yeah,
about Daenerys.
yeah. It's so hard to know how big of an effect religion is going to have on the outcome of this story, but I think we can expect it to be pretty prominent, especially since what we've seen with Melisandre and Jon at this point.
See, I know we kind of talked about it before going into the podcast, but I guess we'll refresh it. So do we think that there just are no gods, or that for some reason there's no afterlife?
Oh boy, I don't.
Because like this whole time
just
we're
don't
led to
know.
believe there's something, but
maybe, but if they're gods, maybe that's the reason they're seen as gods, is because they're the ones who continue to live, but mortal folks don't live on. But if they believe in the gods, then it gives them some kind of ability that they might not otherwise have if they weren't religious. Like, it allows them to make the most of the life they have, rather than afterlife.
I just thought of this. Or do we think that the gods showed Jon no afterlife to harden him because he needs to be stronger?
Oh boy.
See,
I
that's what I'm starting
never
to think about
considered
now.
that at all.
Like maybe he was meant to be
Wow.
hardened.
Wow.
Who
So-
knows?
What's Jon's plan right now? His watch ended. He left. The episode ended. Where's he going? What's he doing?
Going to Winterfell, I think.
Is that his plan?
I don't think he has a fully fleshed plan yet, but we know Sansa's gonna reach the wall very soon, hopefully this weekend, and
Are they gonna like pass each other on the road?
That just always happens with them.
no, Sansa's
Maybe
they're going to have a big reunion, and like we talked about earlier, we know I think Ramsay's going to reach out to Jon and try to bargain Rickon for Sansa, and then eventually that'll lead to Jon and Sansa going to Winterfell and war.
But like I'm curious, like, cause like the way I saw it at first was Jon realizes he has to do something about the Night's King and all that stuff. So is that not why he left? Like that's what I took from it at first.
That's certainly the goal, I think, is to at least go tell people and try to raise awareness as much as possible. But we know that once Sansa reaches him, he's going to realize that he has much more immediate issues to deal with.
Okay.
So it should all come together, I think, by the end of the season.
I was like waiting for him to say that line so badly, and then he said it, and I was like, mic drop.
Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Tormund, who had one of the greatest quotes in the show so far. When Jon said, "I'm not a god," and he goes, "I know you're not. I've seen your pecker.
Yeah.
No god has a pecker that small."
I like that.
Such a great line. I love Tormund. He's such a great character.
Yeah, love that quote. Brilliant.
So I didn't see the next week on Game of Thrones. What's happening?
I don't remember.
Let me
Must not be
think.
all that exciting.
I don't remember at all.
I know we're getting a lot more progression with Daenerys in Vaestel Thrak.
Her storyline's so boring right now too.
Yeah, it is. And how has she not learned at this point that she keeps trying
No
to say,
one
like,
cares.
I'm Daenerys Stormborn, the mother of dragons, breaker of
Breaker of
chains,
chains.
whatever else. It's like,
Talking. She keeps saying
like
all
they
these
don't-
things, and everybody goes, "Who cares?"
yeah, exactly. She doesn't get it. Like, your reputation means nothing
Yeah.
with those people.
Every time she says it, I'm like, Daenerys, they don't care. They don't care at all. Like,
It's
unless
just-
you have your
just-
dragons with you, they don't give a crap.
But yeah, Andy, as far as the preview, we did see that it looks like Jorah and Daario are going to. They showed previews of like a battle involving them, so it seems like Daenerys is probably going to be rescued pretty soon.
I was
I
gonna
hope.
ask where the heck Jorah was. We saw him at the beginning of episode 1, and they're like, "Hey, remember these people? Psych, never see him again."
I wonder what's gonna happen with him. Like, how much longer? And
He
I'm
can't
kind
have
of like
much longer.
I'm kind of like pissed that he like held hands with people and like no one else got it, just him. Like in last season where they were all holding hands, I'm like, no. But like nothing happened from that.
When did they hold hands?
They held hands like when Daenerys was like riding off with her dragons. They like all held hands.
Didn't he have a glove on though?
Did he?
Wasn't he wearing gloves?
I don't know. I'm just
That might be the main factor in that. It's supposed to be like flesh to flesh to get the
I don't know.
grayscale. But
I
yeah,
still-
Jorah probably doesn't have long left. I would imagine.
But it hasn't spread that much, has it? I don't remember where it was.
Not that much. I think maybe a wrist or something like that.
Yeah, it was his wrist, I think, now that you mention it.
But based on another character from the book, so you guys will never meet, I know that it does tend to spread pretty quickly. Maybe like in the books, at least a few years seem to have passed, but for show purposes, I don't see them stretching Jorah out that long.
I don't know if the show's even going to have that many more years left. I think they said they're only going to be like 7 or 8 seasons, so...
Yeah. They have to resolve the storylines more quickly.
They need to end with a movie. I'm not going to ever stop saying this.
I'm telling you, Bran, flashback visions, he can become a filmmaker and give us a movie.
There needs to be some kind of movie. There's no way they're going to be able to finish it all.
Yeah, I think that pretty much
that covers it.
Sums up this very loaded episode. Brought up a lot of theories, and like we talked about the Northern Conspiracy. I was very happy we got no Dorne. I'm happy if we just continue ignoring them.
Never see it again?
Yeah.
Why are we going to see it? Like, I don't... Who cares about the Sand Snakes? Someone's going to kill them, and they're going to be the most irrelevant characters ever.
More Iron Islands, please. Get back to that.
I want to see what the hell's going on with the King's Moot and all that crap.
Yeah, I think the previews showed that there should be more progression in that, because they showed Theon magically getting to the Iron Islands very quickly, and he was arguing with his sister.
Yeah, I remember that now.
He can teleport. That's why they didn't hurt themselves when they jumped off of the wall.
That's what happened. They teleported.
He just
How come he didn't teleport himself away from getting flayed?
'Cause he liked it.
Oh, a masochist. That's nice. Well, on that lovely note, I believe that wraps up our recap of Season 6, Episode 3, titled Oathbreaker. Hope you enjoyed it. We will be back next week to discuss Episode 4, Valar Morghulis.
Bye.